on Let's Wrap.
Creativity brings you joy. And when you find something that brings you joy, that helps your heart. We all want to find happiness and joy in life. And I think creativity can be a great way to find those things.
Creativity, the use of the imagination or original ideas, especially in the production of an artistic work. Today on Let's Wrap, Darin Hollingsworth and Tim Andrews share their creativity journey in painting to create good vibes for life and how you can too. Today on Let's Wrap, we are talking with Darin Hollingsworth and Tim Andrews about using creativity as an outlet both in good times and bad. And I want to thank you both for joining us. And I know our listeners are only going to hear this, but I'm looking at a beautiful art studio behind you. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Glad to have you in my studio.
Well, first of all, we've talked about gratitude in past podcasts, which sort of lead into the different ways that we can find that. And I know you both have used creativity as an outlet. Can you just kind of start with an introduction of how that came about? And, and you two both share that creative talent that you have as well.
A lot of conversations that Darin and I have had about gratitude and creativity around those two topics is how one kind of feeds the other. A lot of times I think that if you are paying attention to what attracts you and to what you're being thankful for over and over, that keeps drawing you back to the same things, that's also going to be the source for your creativity and where you have that creative outlet in your life. So a lot of people don't think that they're creative. They've got that hard stop in their brain, and it's because they say, well, I can't draw or I can't paint. And that to me is a limiting view of creativity. Creativity comes to us in so many ways. It can be that you're a good cook and that you love preparing your food with love and really showing off your skills in the kitchen. Or it could be, writing. I'm not a good writer, but that doesn't mean I'm not creative. It could be what you do, Christine, with your audio and visual and your podcast and your interview skills. All those things to me are very creative outlets.
And Darin, what do you think about when you hear the word creativity? And do a lot of people say just what Tim was talking about? Oh, that's not me.
I did for years. I thought that my creativity was really only expressed in my work because I created relationships with donors in the nonprofit setting. And what I came to realize that there was an art and a craft to that. But in friendship and conversation with Tim, I started to explore some more of my sense of creativity. And then gratitude, as the listeners will know from our previous conversations, and this restates what Tim did say, gratitude opens that awareness of what you notice up more. If you're making a list of 3 things you're grateful for, or you're writing thank you notes about things you're grateful for, that opened up for me a little bit of a willingness to express gratitude differently and a little differently creatively, gratitude, kindness, and all of that. So,
and I think with Darin, it led him back to his childhood ability to draw and paint. And he's found a new love for drawing and painting that he hadn't tapped into for years.
Tell me about both of you when we talk about creativity. What exactly you do when we're talking about how you choose that outlet?
Well, for me, I think there's some things that I need to be creative. I need personally solitude, hence this space in my backyard, so that I can come here and be alone and just be with the things that inspire me around me in the studio, or different images and things that I use that I guess I draw inspiration from. And then I'm just here working until that inspiration comes. But I try to always be doing something, making something, even if it's something small. Or maybe I come out here because I'm feeling bad. um, my body's hurting or something is going on physically with me. Um, I'm having a bleed. And I'll come out here and I can lose myself in a small drawing or something I'm just doodling with and really get into out of my body and into my head and onto the page so that all of that pain has a release.
And Tim, when did you start painting? Was it originally to, to help you deal with hemophilia? I know a lot of your paintings are around that theme.
You know, it is related because I predate factor products. So when I had a bleed as a young child, I had to be immobilized. Well, you try to keep a kid still that wants to get up and run. Well, they've got to have something to do. So my mom gave me all the drawing materials I wanted and books. And so drawing and books were kept me off my feet when I was having bleeds and kept me occupied and interested. And so that turned into my love of painting and drawing.
And Darin, when did you and Tim connect from realizing you had, creative synergies or some of the same things that you enjoy doing when it comes to being artistic or creative?
Well, I would say that a friendship started a great conversation. Tim's husband and I are best friends and have long before the two of them got together. But soon after that, I was like drawn like a moth to a flame to Tim's creative energy and then seeing his work. And I always wanted to kind of do that or be that, but very intimidated by the process. And I had always expressed my creativity either with the spoken word, speaking to people. When I did my podcast, I had some of that creative feeling of seeing a project through to completion. But it really wasn't until the pandemic when I started painting rocks that I opened myself up in a vulnerable way to Tim to say, I don't know anything about color. You were a teacher. Give me some of your wisdom. And he generously did so. So that's how the bridge happened.
It's been really interesting to see Darin baby step his way along. And now then, we were just having a conversation the other day of looking back and saying, do you remember when we were talking about what color was opposite on the color wheel? And now then he's got these whole palettes of colors that he loves to use and recognizes in the environment around him, and how much his awareness of color has grown in just 2 years.
And when you both use your artistic ability, creativity, how does that make you feel? And how important do you think it is for others to realize the power of that when they're struggling, whether it is hemophilia or maybe another health issue or even a mental health issue?
I would say for me, because you hit the nail on the head in the question. We've talked about that some before in our conversations, Christine. I did not realize how much I needed it until I'm doing it. It is, Tim mentioned this a moment ago, it is a meditative type, healthy distraction, focus. When I'm focused on a little bitty rock, I am not in my spin with anxiety and depression. So that would be a great, quick answer for me, an easy one, that it really does help.
I think a lot of this too, if you look at the science behind it, there's the right side and the left side of your brain. Well, if you're drawing, I'm going to use a work example. If I'm drawing while I'm listening to just doodling, not a big complicated drawing, but just if I'm doodling while I'm listening to a program or a presentation or a speaker, I'm opening up both sides of my brain to hear and process that content. And I think I have a lot better retention and understanding of that content by doing that. So the times that you used to get in trouble in class for drawing or doodling and not paying attention, I think the teacher was misguided on that one.
We know this month, being February, there's a lot of talk about the heart with Valentine's Day. And we know, the heart is a muscle and there's physical benefits to exercise, but also I think your mental health can ultimately help heal your heart. How have you both found that artistry, creativity is helpful in, how it makes your heart feel and beat?
Tim has got a great story that ties heart and blood and his creative process together. I really encourage you to tell that story about the tree.
Oh, the tree. Okay, so this has to do with, I think, in the context of creativity being something spontaneous and that you've got to always be aware of and looking for because it can surprise you. We had this Chinese magnolia that had died in the backyard, and we were slowly lopping the limbs off of it, getting ready to take it down. And at some point, I just stopped and said, "That looks like a heart. That looks vascular." And so we stopped, we trimmed it up a little bit, we painted the whole thing red, and it became this amazing sculpture that stayed in the yard for 2 or 3 years after that. And it was just, it did look like a heart with all the arteries coming out and like a human heart. And so that was pretty amazing. I do think too, Christine, creativity brings you joy. And when you find something that brings you joy, that helps your heart. We all want to find happiness and joy in life. And I think creativity can be a great way to find those things.
The other thing about Tim's creative process that's so good about that heart story is when they had to take the tree out, and all of us who would come visit them just knew that that was such a part of both of them because of the way it happened. But Tim also painted it into a beautiful painting with a moon, I believe it is. And so that's a neat part of creativity that can be multifaceted and keep giving you joy by being able to capture a moment differently than the way it was originally created.
We know that HPC's theme is good vibes for life, and there are artistic opportunities for all. But how have you seen art at work, even just within HPC, with both maybe kids and adults?
I'm going to take a step and say I've volunteered for 15 years at summer camp. And for many of those years, I was the arts and crafts director. And so I worked with these kids all summer with art projects and watching them and coming into these classes and saying, "Oh, well, I don't know how to draw. I don't want to draw. All the boys, 12 years old, I don't know how to draw." But before long, they were loving it and watching these kids do just what we were talking about, lose themselves in a drawing, something that they wanted to work on. And then before long, it was like, "Oh, no, I want to go back to art and finish my drawing. I don't want to go do nap time or whatever the next thing was." It's like, "No, I want to go draw."
They were hooked.
They were hooked. But, kids, I think, are so creative and so playful. And that's something that a lesson that we could learn is to keep that joy and that playfulness and creativity in our lives. I think it would benefit us greatly.
And do you think in a lot of arenas that the importance of creativity is diminished? We know even in some schools, a lot of programs have been, cut or completely taken away. Do you think that the importance of that isn't always realized?
I do. I think it can be underappreciated and be one of the first things, especially in our education system, that's cut. But there, again, going back to, all the studies point to the fact that kids who are creative do much better in their academics. Music, art, theater, those kids do better in their other classes with math and science, engineering, that sort of thing.
And I know, Darin, you were involved and led a special art event just before the holidays with kids. Can you talk a little bit about that project and what kind of feedback did you get from just working with the kids and giving them a chance to maybe explore it? Perhaps for some it was the first time, or maybe others they've done it before.
It was a highlight of my holiday season because here I had, I consider myself still a rookie rock painter. A rocker, as we like to say in social media. But I just watching those young children, some at various ages, some younger than others, be so excited to show their rock. And they might have come onto camera in the Zoom environment, shy, and then talking about and sharing with them how it's okay to make mistakes and okay to start over. It was, I don't have children, and so I haven't been around kids that much. So I was a little nervous when Tim and you all asked me to do it, but it was nice to be playful with them. And I absolutely loved it.
If someone would like to start to explore their creativity, whether they're a young child or an adult, where do they start? How do they start?
Well, piece of paper and a pencil, that's pretty cheap. And that could be for writing or jotting down lyrics for a song or doing a drawing out of their imagination. So, and today's kids, it doesn't even have to be a piece of paper and a pencil. There are so many apps for drawing where you can do it on your device
with your finger,
which is something that they're more familiar with. So it's easy enough to get started.
And you know, the beautiful tie-in, kind of the full circle here, one of the best ways to practice gratitude is journaling the things you're grateful for at the beginning of your day or at the end of your day, personally at home or at the office, to say, these are my wins today. These are things I'm grateful for at work or people. So pen and paper, I do think, is a great way to start to limit the self-editing, because you do what comes comfortably to you. And in my own gratitude journal, at times, I have found myself doodling, like, what would gratefulness for this look like? And only after I painted rocks did I start doing that.
And do you think some people think that, and you know, we've talked a lot about painting and drawing specifically, but there are many other ways to be creative. But do people think that their art has to be concrete, meaning, you know, actual objects and people, when they could actually just splatter paint something and, you know, put a lot of colors on a paper, and it can be more abstract too?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think that the appreciation for color is an arm of art that is very strong and stands by itself. So color theorists and color expressionists. But I think that art, as you say, takes many different forms. And just making something, a carpenter is an artist. They're making something that never existed before. And they're designing it in their head. And they're cutting those pieces of 2x4 or to build it and then shape it into what they want it to look like. So I think we just, it's the thing that sets us apart from the other primates, is our ability to be creative and to make things. And we started that in prehistoric times by putting our hand in paint and putting it on a cave wall, and we've done it ever since.
And I've read things about how using your hands can be so beneficial. And I think most, maybe not all, but most creativity and artistry would be using your hands on some level. And it's kind of connecting that with maybe your head and your heart.
I think Tim pointed out to me in multiple conversations, because you can tell we've had this conversation on different levels, and movement of some kind along with creative process is probably tied, because if you're a dancer and you're not creating something that's lasting necessarily, your movement is fluid and it's going to stop, but you're definitely using your body there. Someone else brought up to me, musicians use their hands, but they create something that we can't hold. Mm-hmm. And I'm drawn to music and theater, is because it's fleeting. Yeah.
So we've talked about if someone, you know, wants to start and they don't know how, but how did you both start? Do you remember the first piece of artwork that you did specifically? And tell me about, how did it make you feel? And then what did you think about it when it was finished?
I'll start because mine's more recent than yours, so you might need a moment to reflect. But I remember when I finished my first rock on July the 5th of 2020. And yes, that was the day I had found a rock. And then I painted one, and I painted something I had no idea it was a dragonfly. I had no idea I could do it. None. Zero. And I just sat down and put some paint on a rock. I had ordered the rocks and the paints from Amazon because we were still in lockdown. And I was kind of taken aback. And my mom came into the room at the time, and she was like, where did that come from? So it was a pretty shocking feeling. And even now, when I finish something, even if I like it or I don't like it, it's like, boy, I just did that. So that's mine.
Well, mine goes so far back that I could not remember it. But I will tell you that years later, this was an example. When my maternal grandmother, had passed away, when we were clearing out furniture from her house, we flipped over a coffee table, and underneath the coffee table was this whole panorama of dinosaurs that I had laid under that coffee table and drew with Crayolas and pencil all across there, all the different dinosaurs that I knew at the time, and volcanoes erupting and palm trees. And so that was pretty funny when we flipped that over and saw that.
Hidden treasure there. It wasn't a cave painting, but it was a coffee table painting. That's wonderful.
Exactly. It could be a retro painting now, maybe, or something like that. Like an
found
antique
work of Tim Andrews.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was trying to say. The long lost work.
I've never heard that story. That's a good one.
As many patients come to HPC for help, what do you find maybe is a common need among all of them, and where creativity could help them in that journey?
Well, I think, as I mentioned before, I use it a lot to help with my pain. I think that being able to do something that is centered, quiet, relatively low activity level, because if you're hurting, you don't want to move around a lot. I know of several of the older guys my age that have joint damage use some sort of a creative outlet, whether they realize or they name it or not. I've noticed over the years that many of them do things that are quiet and meditative that helps them with that pain, that journey, so that you don't use an opiate, or that you don't just suffer, that it's some way to get out of your head, and your head out of your body, maybe would be a better way to say that. Your mind off your pain and onto something else that you can focus on.
I know knitters and stitchers, crochet or cross stitchers or others who have used that very detailed focus to get through a therapeutic incident, because it's harder to transport paint and a canvas than it might be some yarn and needles, and they can take it with them to anything from a transfusion to chemotherapy or otherwise. So I've seen that in practice.
And Tim, when you were talking about how, it was a way to deal with pain, a lot of your paintings, are sort of depicting that. So take me through that process and how it helps you, because, maybe you might think, well, I'm going to paint a bird and a tree because I'm feeling pain, but you use that sort of as a vehicle to tell your story as well.
Well, yeah. And we've got this one right here behind us, so I could talk about that one a little bit. That one is sort of a defiant stance, I think, with the arms all crossed, sort of a Superman stance there. But at the same time, and it's about the HIV epidemic. There are skulls in the background representing people that were lost. But it's also about vulnerability, because I'm not standing there in a suit of armor. I don't have anything between me and my viewer except I'm standing there defiantly. I'm strong in my vulnerability, I think, is a good way to put that.
And how long did that take you, that painting?
Oh, probably a month or so of working on it. If something that size usually takes a while.
You've been doing this a lot longer than Darin. So when you look back at some of your early work, what is that like? Because you have, a lot of work between when you started and now.
Well, I do so many different types of painting. Um, I love birds, so I'll fall in and out of doing birds. Landscapes, I like doing landscapes. So I sort of fall in and out of different uh, genres of painting. And then, and like I've said before, I'm always available in my studio. So that's why I have quite a few self portraits, is because if I'm bored of painting a landscape or a bird or something else, a flower, then, well, I'm here. So I can always paint me. I've got a big mirror opposite over here, and I can set up my easel, look in that mirror, and just say, well, this is what Tim looks like today at 61 years old. Let's just paint him.
And I have been fortunate to see some of Tim's other art in even three-dimensional medium, but tied into birds. Was it bird shacks? And I don't think there's one in the studio that I could even go to, but they are like each little custom home and designed for a bird that would inhabit that type of hole, but with other decor around it that wouldn't scare it away. They're pretty amazing.
Yeah, I made those for years. They were fun.
What would your best, quote or saying be about art that might inspire someone to take it up?
Oh my. You may stump me on that one, Chris.
I'll give him a minute to think, and I'll just give you a perspective from my own journey with this. Don't be afraid to start over. Don't be afraid to start over. That was freedom for me, to not edit so much that I messed up and I don't want to do it anymore, but to say, okay, it didn't turn out like I wanted it. It's a rock. And I can start over.
That's pretty good. I would, in fact, if just start. Mm-hmm. A dear friend of mine used to say, just put lines on paper. And so that's a pretty good one. Just put lines on paper. Just start. Whatever it becomes, you can change it or erase it or start again. But yeah, just start.
Absolutely. That's good advice. Is there anything else you would like to add?
I just thank you all for including me in this conversation, because I've really enjoyed learning about HPC more. I've learned things in this conversation with Tim that I did not know about him, like the lost works of Tim Andrews. And thank you for bringing some additional attention to something that's very important to me, and that's gratitude and how it can mesh so nicely with the creative process.
And again, I thank our listeners for tuning in, and I hope that you can all pick up a pencil and just start putting lines on paper.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
You've been listening to HPC's Let's Wrap, a podcast by HPC Specialty Infusion for patients and providers. We're proud to specialize in patient health and happiness at hpcspecialtypharmacy.com or call 1-800-757-9192.